Welcome to the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. This is the podcast for dairy producers and professionals who are committed to moving our industry forward. I'm Peggy Coffeen, and each week we bring you the leaders, the lessons, and real-world stories from the people who have built the dairy business we know today and those who are shaping its future. Join us on the journey by following Uplevel Dairy on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and subscribe at upleveldairy.com to get new episodes and our Dairy Insights blogs right in your inbox. What are the keys to raising top-performing dairy heifers and beef-on-dairy calves? Well, today we are bringing you calf and heifer raising insights gained from experiences in the U.S. and far beyond as we sit down with Dairy Calf and Heifer Association board members, Jim Van Pater and Rodolfo Nava. Jim joins us from Wisconsin as the general manager at Nails Brothers Dairy. However, his consulting and management expertise with Van Pater Dairy LLC has taken him from Australia to Indonesia. Rodolfo brings international insights as well, having served as a feedlot manager in Mexico and providing consulting services and industry positions before assuming his current role as general manager at NM Nucan in New Mexico. Whether you are raising dairy replacements or young stock destined for the feedlot, this conversation with these two Dairy Calf and Heifer Association board members is for you. And for more on this topic, mark your calendars for the Dairy Calf and Heifer Association's annual meeting, April 7th through the 9th in Tucson, Arizona. The Dairy Calf and Heifer Association is the premier membership organization serving calf, heifer, and dairy and beef producers on improving their herd health and profitability by providing leading-edge gold standards and best practices, information, educational webinars, an online learning library, and networking opportunities. This episode is sponsored by First Defense because the best vaccine for Scours isn't a vaccine. All this and more here today on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. Jim and Rodolfo, welcome to the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. Could you take a few minutes and tell me a little bit about who you are, where you're from, what you do, and also your involvement with the Dairy Calf and Heifer Association?
Jim Van Pater, manage Nails Brothers Farms in Juneau, Wisconsin. We milk about 2,400 Holsteins and raise all our Holstein heifer calves and hutches at our facility. Been in dairy all my life, grew up in dairy in northwest Wisconsin, so I've been doing it for like 50 years now. That's how old I am. Had an opportunity to work some different places, done some international work, spent a year in Turkey, a couple years in Australia. I do some work with a dairy in Indonesia a couple times a year. I go over there and help them out, so get to travel a little bit, just knowing stuff about cows. So we're really passionate about what I do. About calves is a big deal. Calves is the future of your dairy herd or your beef herd in Rodolfo's case. But we want to make sure we make every effort to have every calf reach its genetic potential on our dairy. My work with Dairy Calf and Heifer, I've been on the board for this 4 years now. A friend of mine who was on the board before got me on the board a few years ago, and I've been active with it. It gives you access to all the cutting edge material out there and the people in the industry. So it's a really good organization to be part of, and we have a great meeting every year. This year we're in Arizona, so hope everybody can join us there.
So you really value the networking that you've experienced through DCHA. And in fact, there's resources that are available to folks that are at the conference and year-round as well, including an online learning library that has vetted sources from the DCHA gold standards. I know that's one of the programs or one of the initiatives that Dairy Calf and Heifer Association has put a lot of emphasis on bringing forward as a way to serve those calf and heifer growers out there. And now let's go over to you, Rodolfo. Let's get to know you a little bit and also your involvement and experience with DCHA.
Okay, my name is Rodolfo Nava. I was born and raised in Mexico, and I'm the general manager for NM Nucan LP. We are a 100% calf ranch focused on beef on dairy calves. Yeah, we do some stray Holsteins where our main location is in Portales, New Mexico. And through my life, I have had the opportunity to be involved in. I'm a guy that comes from the feedlot. Yeah, so I have more like a feedlot perspective into the operations. Me and my family, we moved back to the United States in 2021 because this opportunity arose to come and start Nucan. And it's been a passionate experience because the company has grown, everything has improved, and then being involved with all these markets that are getting. But at the end of the day, we're passionate for what we do. We're passionate about developing people, and that's why we are here. My involvement with DCHA started three 3 years ago. Just I went to the conference in Denver, and then I got invited to join the board. I see DCHA as a great networking opportunity to meet people that is in the same industry, that they have different perspective, but at the end of the day, we all share the passion for what we do and the care for the cattle.
So both of you have worked with calves and heifers in different systems and different environments, and in some cases across the United States, outside of the United States, and even around the world. As you said, Jim, we're talking all the way to Indonesia. But if you could just strip it all down, what is one principle that you each believe holds true anywhere you go when it comes to raising strong, healthy, young replacement calves? Or beef on dairy calves?
For the dairy calves, the first thing we have to do is get the colostrum into the calf basically immediately to protect the calf. And then carrying on from that, we have to make sure our nutrition level is at high enough plane to allow that calf to grow to its genetic potential. I'm a big believer in whole milk. I'm a big believer in 3 times a day feeding. And then the comfort of the calves as well, the ventilation, to make sure we're giving her every opportunity to reach her potential. Those are probably the couple, 3 biggest things to me to get calves off to a good start. Colostrum, of course, the plane of nutrition we're feeding the calf. That's why I like whole milk. Whole milk does better than milk replacer in my experiences around the world. And then making sure we're properly ventilated and supplying that calf a good environment to grow in.
Rodolfo, what would you say?
We're looking to raise the best calf, and the best way to raise that calf is to get it off to a good start. Everything starts with really good colostrum, with really good handling in the first 24 hours of life, and then take over there. Like for us, that we collect calves pretty much all over the country, and then bring it to our depots, and then move it to our main location in Portales, New Mexico. We take a lot of pride on handling the calves, making sure that everything is properly handled, that everything is sanitized, and that as we're stepping up the calves through the plane of nutrition, that we're doing the things right, because we know that these are baby calves. We just want to do the best in order to keep them healthy, in order to make them comfortable, and to reach their full potential.
So I'm hearing in your response here, Rodolfo, echoing a lot of what Jim has shared with that colostrum and also that high plane of nutrition. When you look at these different calf and heifer programs, I'm really playing into your experience of being the receiver at your facilities. What's a management practice that you think others could learn from, in addition to what you've already shared here? Or maybe it's getting in the weeds a little bit more with colostrum and nutrition. What do you think that you have learned and that others can learn about what it takes to give those calves the best start possible so that they can thrive not only in your care, but in their lifespan and their intended destination after they leave your place?
The best management practice, as you mentioned, is colostrum. Make sure that that's stated in the gold standards for colostrum. That is the quality, the quantity, the condition or the temp, and that we need to take care of that. And that's all for a good start. Then sanitation, for sure, is good on that. And something that we are looking into is to do more automation. Here in the United States, we need in these markets to take advantage of the large economies. It's pretty labor intense what we do because we handle babies. So we are looking a lot into automations, data collection systems, so we can make the best decisions for what we do every day.
So when you say automation, you're referring more on the data side?
Both on the data side, and also on the feeding the calves. Like in my system, in my operation, we all have only the California style hutches, yeah, that we gotta go and feed the calves one by one, put a bottle in front of every calf every day, and that's pretty labor intense. Yeah, and then we're looking to for ways to do more, make it less labor intense, so we can expand our operations.
I'm going to have you take a little half step back in this conversation because you, again, just like Jim, had stressed the importance of colostrum. When you talk about good quality colostrum and colostrum feeding, what are those benchmarks and how many feedings of colostrum, and is this colostrum that's been collected from the dam and pasteurized? Is it a colostrum replacing product? Can you get in the weeds a little bit on what you believe is the best practices for getting that calf off to the right start?
That's pretty interesting, Peggy, because by the time that the calves get to us, according to the research that it has done, it's already too late to do the colostrum, because what the literature says, it has to be done between the first 24 hours. But something that we do here, because we treat them as day olds, but it's what we have done to research is the best practice for us is to do something that is called the transition milk. So we keep these calves on transition milk for the first 14 days of life.
So transition milk obviously is going to have some of those antibodies and goodies that colostrum carries, but also the benefits of whole milk. What are the ratios that you look at in transition milk to find that perfect balance for that calf over those 14 days?
Well, we feed them around 20 grams per day as a dry matter. That's what we feed them out of a commercial product. And what we look in that commercial product is that comes from complete animal sources, the fat and protein of that. According to research, when you add some vegetable fat or some protein, it's less absorption for the calves. So it's not as good development as it is.
What would you say is the overall impact that you've seen just in general doing that additional supplementation of transition milk versus going straight to a pasteurized whole milk or milk replacer?
Well, we evaluate that and we see some reduction, some more average daily gain, and the scouring period was less and less severe, the scours on the calves.
And that translates into not just a healthier animal, but I would imagine too some labor savings and cost savings as well that would have been associated with treating calves, in addition to losses and gains and getting calves where they need to be at the right time. Is there a visual noticing of just the calves looking different from that extra supplementation? When you walk by them, do you see it in them?
They look more alert, and when they go after the bottle, they seem like they are suckling in that nipple way better than the ones that they're not getting that transition milk. Yeah, so they have that reflex better developed.
And Jim, I'm going to bring you in this conversation as well. You had emphasized earlier the importance of colostrum, and now we are transitioning our conversation, no pun intended, to not only colostrum, but transition milk, feeding that to calves. Weigh in on your experience and your observations. Is this something that you see more and more dairies doing? And is it something that you recommend others explore the idea of including in their practices?
Yeah, Peggy, we started feeding colostrum replacer to the calves the first 14 days, 1st of May this last year. And we actually had a seminar at Dairy Calf and Heifer in Denver last year with Dr. Steele from Ontario talking about his research. And I sat in on that and I said, that sounds like something we should try. So we started feeding 25 grams each feeding to the calves of the colostrum replacer. We went from about a 2.15 daily gain to 2.3 on the calves that got the colostrum replacer. We also saw a little less scouring and a better lung score on our ultrasounds when we do it. So we've continued to do that. We've been very happy with the results. If you can get 0.15 pounds of gain from feeding that for 14 days, it's a little bit of work, but we've got that worked out. The kinks worked out of it. And there's about a $30 cost per calf, but I think you get a big return on that from having a higher weight, birth weight calf. It's going to produce more milk when she calves in and having less lung issues when we ultrasound as well.
How interesting that development came out of the DCHA conference last year and what you had picked up from that event and taken home and put into practice. You mentioned that it took a little bit of work to implement this at your dairy. Can you walk through what it did take to adjust your current system? What had to change on the labor side in order to make this part of your calf care protocol?
We tried to do it in one feeding, giving them 70 grams in one feeding. At the 1 o'clock feeding, we were just mixing it in their pail with their milk. It tended to throw off the nutrition level a little bit. And so ultimately we went to feeding it 3 times a day in an equal amount. We mix up the pasteurizer on one tank. We mix up just for the calves under 14 days, and we mix it right in the pasteurizer. And then it's fed that way. So it took us probably 6 weeks to finally get it fine-tuned, but that's what we've done now for since probably about mid-June. So they're getting it spaced out evenly in each of the 3 feedings. They get 25 grams of the product. So.
Well, thank you for sharing how you implemented that into your system. And from the sounds of it, the results have been well worth it. And you're looking to continue that here and carry that forward, Jim?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, anything I can do to make my calves better, I'm going to figure out a way to do it. I don't know, Peggy, if you're old enough, but you remember the old Fram oil filter ad where the mechanic would say you could buy the oil filter or you can buy the engine? I kind of apply that to our calves. We put a lot of time and money into our calves in that first 75 days. But once you get them through that, they're pretty much bulletproof down the way. So investing a lot in those calves in that first 3 months is a huge thing for us. And we think it's well worth the investment of what we get coming out the back end when we got heifers coming in at a year 10 months or a year 11 months and putting out 30,000 pounds of milk because we grew the calf right. So,
Jim, you've been in this business for a while. I think you mentioned earlier about 50 years. That's quite a bit of credibility that you built up from growing up on a dairy and staying in the industry over your lifetime. Rodolfo, you've also been in this business for a long time as well. What you have learned in your career about what it takes to get to that end product, which is in some cases it's going to be that market ready beef on dairy cross, or it's going to be that high performing, long lasting cow that's problem free in the herd. What do you think is the most important thing you've learned about those early stages of life that has changed in the industry in your time in this business?
I think what is more important is consistency. Regardless of the product that we use, if we use milk replacer, if we use whole milk pasteurized, but consistency on these calves is critical in those early days, as you mentioned, in the first 3 months. As I mentioned, they're babies, so we want to do everything the same every day. As something as important as is the water temp, that in my case, the water temp that we mix the milk replacer with, how much solids we feed for the calves, how accurate we are on changing, stepping up the calves, the ration mixing on the dry feed. Consistency is key for the success these days.
So that's become more and more clear to you as you work with calves and heifers all over the world, that consistency is more important perhaps than we ever thought. Jim, what would you say? What's been the biggest thing that stands out to you that you've observed that has changed the way that we get to that best quality end product?
Well, like I said, I'm old, and I go back to the 60s when we still tried to raise calves in the barn, and it just didn't work. You lost 25, 30% of them. In the 80s, we finally went to hutches, and if you fed them and kept them dry, they lived. It was a big change from trying to raise calves in barns, I would say, to where we are now. We raise everybody in hutches. I think hutches is a great place for calves. It may not be a great place for my workers, but we take care of them. If people build calf barns, it's better for your workers, but it's still not better for your calves. Calves in hutches, even in my neck of the woods where it gets 20, 30 below, is the best place for a calf. So I think that's that. The housing and the ventilation that we've come up with in the last 50 years is crazy. We don't lose calves. I mean, like you said, you used to figure 30, 40 years ago, you lost 25% of your baby calves. You never made it to your milking string. Last year, we had 1,350 heifer calves born. We had 12 deaths in the hutches. So less than 1%. That's where the industry needs to be. Like Rodolfo says, they're babies. We got to treat them like that.
When you look at where you are today and the animals that you're raising and the ability to just keep calves not only alive, but growing and thriving and on their way to their destination, whichever side of the business that's on, what are the biggest challenges of raising calves in today's world that you're dealing with right now?
The biggest thing is environmental regulations. DNR doesn't like hutch pads, but with the CAFO regulations we have, those are coming down the pikes, and people have to build barns at $7,000 a stall for baby calves just to meet runoff requirements. In our operation, that's one of the biggest issues I face at Nails Brothers here in Wisconsin. Other places around the world, like in Indonesia, we raise calves in elevated hutches or elevated crates, and it's hot, so we have basically tunnel ventilate the barn to keep the air quality good for the calves. And it's the same thing there. You just got to feed them. I mean, we used to feed milk replacer, and every time I go there, the calves are skinny, and I keep telling them, we got to feed milk, guys. You got milk. Finally got them on milk, and now the calves aren't skinny. But the international milk replacer doesn't meet the same standards here does. You can have one pallet that's so much fat and protein, and the next one's totally different. So the variable in the international part of the business it causes a problem with the milk replacer in calves, in my experiences in other countries.
And so you see that when you're abroad, but what I'm gathering from you is that when it comes to the calves in your own backyard here in Wisconsin, the challenge isn't so much the calves themselves for you, but it's more so the regulations around what it takes to raise them in a compliant way. And no wonder that we see a lot of calves that are leaving the Midwest and going down to places like where Rodolfo is at. And so I'm going to change over to you here. What's the biggest challenge that you're facing in raising young stock today?
Well, as Jim mentioned, always regulations. That is something that we got to complain with, and sometimes you got to spend a lot of money to complain with those regulations. But for me, also another big challenge is to keep my crew delivering the same execution every day. We are in an open environment. I ask my guys to do the same job when it's probably 105, 106 outside as the same day that is the wind is blowing 30, 32 miles an hour to be delivering all that. And it's hard to do that. It's a challenge. But once when you figure out what is your people, what are they after, what motivates your team, it can happen. Yeah, it's challenging because it's not fun to be out there. It's not fun to be there. Yeah, but that's a big challenge. In my system, another big challenge is the fact that how we communicate with the dairies. We have a system that we can report to the dairies how their calves are doing. Yeah. So they can use that as a feedback to their maternity guys. Yeah, because we have seen some dairies that in 1 week they're doing really good, and the next week they're not doing as good as they were doing the week before, and so on and so on. So developing those relationships are crucial for my system, but it's challenging because with this market, if we stop picking those calves, we know somebody else is going to be picking those calves, and we need those calves to be raised.
Rodolfo, I want to lean into what you've been sharing here a little bit more, because you talked about the challenge really on this people side of keeping people motivated to consistently do a good job every day, no matter what, including no matter what the environment is, no matter what the climate's throwing at them. This part of the business, this team motivation and culture, that's something that you've spent some time on. So if you could kind of break that out, whether it's your current operation or others that you've been involved with or worked with in the past, Where do you see the most common breakdowns occurring? And what are some ways that you've been able to help overcome that in order to get the results as a team that you need to deliver for your clients?
When the breakdowns occur is when we start having rotation with the team members. So what we do is we try to be competitive on the labor market in the area that we are. Every time I honor my word with my guys. If I tell them that we're going to have like a cookout for everybody, let's do that. If we're going to implement like a bonus system, we honor that. If we're going to give everybody a raise, or if we're going to pay an extra holiday through the year, that's how we motivate. I like to be flexible without being short on how many people we need to run the ranch every day. Yeah, because at the end of the day, we all have needs. We can get sick. We all want to go and spend an extra day at home or something like that, yeah. Or we all want to go and watch our kids if they have like a performance at a school or something. I like to be flexible, but there's some rules for that, because at the end of the day, I know how many people I need every day to be consistent in my operation. And that's a challenge, because sometimes the people, they don't understand that flexibility comes with a lot of responsibility and commitment. So rules have to be clear on that end.
And Jim, I'm going to tap you in on this one as well, because you work with, again, teams at your own dairy and around the world. What does it take to get everybody on board and working towards the same goal?
Well, it takes consistency. Like Ronald said, anything in dairy is consistency. Consistency in your staff and guys that have been with you for several years. If you're having a lot of turnover, it's hard to get those, get the results you're expecting. If you got guys that have been with you for, I think our calf, probably the longest guy is 6 or 7 years. And I think the shortest guy, I think I have one guy that started in the last year. That calf team stays pretty consistent. It doesn't turn over. And we support those guys to make their job easier and let them know every day that you're happy with what they're doing. And the guys take a lot of pride in what we do. And you get that buy-in, they got the same pride that I have in it, we're off to the races. We're good then. But consistency in that staff, and my staff is only, I don't have the staff I got 6 guys total. I got 2 guys that come in later in the morning and do the 9 o'clock feeding at night. So in the middle of the day, I'm fully staffed and we're moving calves or resetting hutches and stuff. But the guys just really work well together and they take pride in what we do. And we keep a really clean calf hutch area. Our calves are always better be well bedded. I'll see a dirty knee in any of my calves anywhere. The hutches are all perfectly in line. The owners like that, to look out their back of their office and see all the hutches in line. So we take a lot of pride in that. And we have a kind of a saying in our dairy that you get 2 are ready at all times and you only get 1 chance at a first impression. And so we tend to get a lot of people through our calf operation, and we want to make the right impression every time. That's our goal.
You mentioned goals and you've been talking about expectations, and we're at a point where it's early in 2026. So do either of you have a big goal for your calf programs in 2026 that you're looking to bring forward?
I mean, we just want to keep going, keep the numbers that we're hitting. I mean, the last several years, I've seen several changes. In 2018, I came back to Nails Brothers. I'd been there before, and when I was international and I came back, we were running about 1.8 daily gain on the calves and the hutches. So we implemented a 3-time-a-day feeding system that took us from 1.8 to about a 2.1. We raised the protein level in our starter we went from 18 to 20 to 22. Just a couple of those things. And then, like I said, in the last year, feeding the transition milk or the colostrum replacer in the first 14 days has made a difference. And also, all lung scoring calves, we've done that for probably 2 years now. So it's really interesting to see when you're doing preg checks in the heifer in the breeding barns. They had a lung score 0 both times, and they got pregnant the first time. Or their daily gains they were 2.3, and she's pregnant the first time. You see the correlation between what you do in that first 90 days and what you do when she's 14 months old and pregnant on the first service and off to the races. that makes me feel good. So really no new. We just want to keep going what we're doing.
And it sounds like you put in the time and the effort to really get a good solid program in place. And now you get to reap the rewards of that, especially when you can see it in the data itself. And Rodolfo, how about you? What's on the docket for 2026?
Well, one pretty big goal that we have is to find ways to decrease the days on hutch that we keep our calves, but without sacrificing any performance or giving up animal health. Right now, our system is set up for roughly 90 days on hutch. Days on hutch are pretty labor intense, but we're looking for ways to decrease that for probably 75 to 70 days on hutch. That's a big, really, really big goal that we have. And what we want to accomplish is, so by decreasing those days, we are hoping to take better care of the calves the days that are going to stay in the hutch. It takes a lot because we need to build more pen capacity and we need to train our crews better to watch the calves in the pens and all that, but that's a big goal that we have for this year.
That is a big goal. It sounds like you have a plan to put that in action and look forward to hearing the results of that and seeing how that works out for you guys. For other producers out there that are listening and they're looking for ways that they can improve their calf and heifer performance as well in the year ahead, if you could identify one or two key areas that you would say, if you're going to focus your time and effort on raising the best calves and heifers that you can, this is where you should put your resources first, what would those one or two areas be?
I think for me, going back to what we said before, the colostrum, that's the first thing. We got to get that right. And then I think the biggest thing that can really boost your performance is if you can work it into your system is 3 times a day feeding. When you can pick up a third of a pound of daily gain on the calves by feeding one extra feeding, if you can staff that and do that, I think that's a pretty easy return on your investment. It was for us, and I think we've seen it at other dairies I work with when we've implemented 3 times a day feeding as well.
Rodolfo, what would you add?
Well, I think for the way we make decisions is just get better on your data collection systems so you can make better decisions. Just don't hesitate on developing your teams. You develop your team, you create that commitment with your team, you make clear statements that they are important as a person, as a team member. So execution, you are chasing excellence in execution.
That's a good quote right there, Rodolfo. Chasing excellence and execution. I like that one. And so both of you are board members of the Dairy Calf and Heifer Association, and you have your upcoming conference in Arizona coming up here shortly. So I'm curious for the both of you, how do you see that role that DCHA plays in helping producers be able to implement some of those best practices on farms? What do you see as the benefits that you've experienced personally and the ones that you've seen some of your fellow DCH members also leverage in order to hit their own goals?
The advantage you have is the access we have to the quality of speakers we have we got the best guys in the world. They're talking about what their research or their experiences are. And then just the networking with the other raisers around the country is huge. You get to know these guys, you have dinner together, you compare notes. Everybody's a phone call away. If you got a question, you want to talk to somebody you talk to at the conference and using the other side of the country, pick up the phone. Everybody's willing to share what works and what doesn't work. But you always want to learn from somebody else's mistake, not your own. So ask a lot of questions. That's how we learn. You're always learning. You're always trying to get better. And we're always trying to get more efficient in what we do in the dairy or the beef industry. I think that's a big part of it. The learning libraries and stuff that we've developed in the last couple of years are pretty intensive. I don't think there's anything else like it in the industry. And just because I haven't used a lot of it doesn't mean there's a lot of good stuff there. So I think that's where the benefit of the Dairy Calf and Heifer Association comes in. Learning from other people. That's how we learn. I mean, and that's a great strength that the organization has.
And you've taken some of those learnings and implemented them like you shared today on your own dairy. But also you mentioned the networking and the way that there are these resources that are not just at the conference itself, but the people you can continue to connect with throughout the year. And of course, the online learning library that's stacked with all of those vetted sources and the DCHA gold standards. Jim, this has been beneficial in the calves that you're raising there at Nails Brothers. But something else that DCHA has also invested heavily into in the last few years and really put a focus in on is improving the way that we raise these beef on dairy calves. And for you, Rodolfo, this is your wheelhouse. So what have been some of the things that you've gotten out of DCHA and that you think other producers might too?
Well, something that is really valuable is the networking, because sometimes we see a great product working on one system, but then we just cannot get it to work in our system. And sometimes it's just because you don't understand what happens in that system that make it the product work. Sometimes it can be a great product that was developed according to the needs of the calves, yeah, but sometimes it was just little bit of things that I'm gonna something random, like an electrolyte, yeah. Sometimes the way electrolyte works, some electrolytes work better before feeding milk, and some electrolytes work better after feeding the milk. Some little things like that that you get to connect with other producers. They say, I'm using electrolyte A, but it's not working in my system. And the other producers say, well, that electrolyte is working pretty good in my system. And then you start chatting with different people, and they say, well, the way I'm using this electrolyte is I'm feeding it after the milk. That's my biggest struggle because I'm feeding it before milk. And just that is a really simple example, but that happens a lot in our industry. So when you get together with a lot of producers in the same room, and that we all are available to speak, because we get busy once when we get back to our operations. The phone is ringing, somebody is asking for your help, somebody's asking for your advice, you have a load of milk that you need to unload, or you have a truck that you need to load going out. But the fact that we all get together in the same room and with that mindset to develop those relationships, that's a great advantage.
And, last year you had more than 325 attendees at that annual conference. And I'm sure that this year's event in Tucson will draw that size, if not more, as others are reaping the benefits of the networking and the continuing conversations and resources that the Dairy Calf and Heifer Association has to offer. As we close out this conversation today, is there anything else that you want to add? Anything that you had prepared to share that I didn't give you the opportunity to share?
Well, for me, I just wrote down that something that helps me, it has helped me a lot, is that I always like to keep my eyes and my ears open to learn from my people.
And when you say your people, that's your team?
My team and my colleagues all the time.
That's some good, solid advice right there. And Jim, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, I guess I just like to invite people out to our conference in Tucson in April. It's right after Easter. It's up the El Conquistador Resort. I guess I haven't been there. They tell me it's a pretty nice place. Got a couple of nice golf courses and trails and stuff. Come early and stay late and enjoy Arizona in April. It's usually pretty nice. A lot better in Wisconsin, probably. Some of the stuff we got going on there, they're touring the University of Arizona's research facility. They do a lot of work with cooling and heat stress and stuff. And then one of the other tours is Shamrock Dairy. It's a pretty impressive dairy. I've been there a couple times. It's probably been 10 years, but they run a lot of cows there and a lot of history in that dairy. And there's a lot of good dairies in that part of Arizona that I've visited in the past years. So looking forward to maybe getting back out at Shamrock and seeing how they're doing these days. All our sessions are simultaneously in Spanish, which is great. Everybody gets the most out of the sessions that way. And it's just a great place to learn and surround yourself with a lot of other very successful calf and heifer raisers from around the country and the world as far as that goes. So
Well, looking forward to a successful Dairy Calf and Heifer Association annual meeting once again for you and your fellow board members and truly your friends that are all in the same business and have the same purpose of wanting to raise those highest quality and high performing calves, whether they're going into the dairy herd or whether they're beef on dairy calves with a different destination in mind. So I thank you, Rodolfo and Jim, for joining me here on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. You just heard from DCHA board members Rodolfo Nava and Jim Van Pater here on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. Thanks for listening, and be sure to check out the Dairy Calf and Heifer Association website at calfandheifer.org for more information about membership, upcoming events, and especially the DCHA annual conference and trade show held at the Hotel El Conquistador Resort in Tucson, Arizona, April 7th through 9th. And be sure to follow DCHA on Facebook, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, and YouTube. This episode is sponsored by First Defense, because the best vaccine for Scours isn't a vaccine. Thank you for listening to the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to follow the show, share this episode with your friends in the dairy community, and leave a review. At Uplevel Dairy, we're here to highlight the leaders, the lessons, and the real-world experiences that are shaping the future of our dairy industry. Find more by following us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram for behind-the-scenes content and upcoming guests. And subscribe at upleveldairy.com to get new episodes and our Dairy Insights blogs right in your inbox. I'm Peggy Coffeen, and until next time, keep on learning, keep on leading, and keep up-leveling your dairy.